meeting number 9 of the House Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure, and Communities. I'm going to forego the usual speech, as many of you, I'm sure, are well aware of what to do and what not to do in these new virtual meetings. So I'm going to skip straight to pursuant to Standing Order 1082. The committee is meeting today to continue its study on the impact of COVID-19 on the aviation sector. Now I would like to welcome our witnesses and introduce from Air Transport Association of Canada.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Kusi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that we have the potential to have the resources until 6 Eastern Standard Time. And given that the witnesses have been patiently waiting and have put aside their afternoons to be here, I'm going to ask, please, if we can extend for the maximum amount of time possible till 6 p.m. Eastern Standard, as I understand it. So perhaps you confirm, first of all, you can confirm that is the latest we can go. And secondly, if you please can confirm that this is possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Yes, it is. I can confirm it is the latest we can go. And my intent was to go to 6, but now that you brought it up, I'll ask the committee if everybody's okay with that. I had intended going to 6 o'clock. Everybody's okay with that? Great, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Moving on, I'm going to introduce the witnesses. We have from Air Transport Association of Canada, Mr. John McKenna, the President and CEO. From the Canadian Airports Council, Mr. Daniel Robert Gooch, President. From the Cooperative de Transport Régional de Québec, we have Serge Rivière, Director General. From the National Airlines Council of Canada, we have Mike McNancy, President and CEO. And from the Regional Community Airports of Canada, we have Brian Grant, the Chair, and Todd Tripp, Vice Chair. So with that, gentlemen, I'm not sure who wants to start us off, but I'll throw it at you. And the first person that puts up their hand, I will recognize and will have the floor. Mr. McKenna, do you want to start? Take yourself off mute, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The Air Transport Association of Canada represents this country's commercial aviation, has done so since 1934. We have approximately 180 members engaged in all levels of commercial aviation operating in every region of Canada. We welcome this opportunity to speak to this committee on the impact of COVID-19 on our industry. Yet the damage is easy to assess. Operations are at levels 80 to 90% lower than 1 year ago. Some operators have suspended operations altogether. Tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. There's hardly enough revenue to meet our short-term obligations. Airports are raising fees to compensate for lost revenue, not allowed by law to incur deficits. NAV Canada has implemented a fee increase of 29.5% as of last September 1. Toutes ces augmentations résultant largement d'une absence d'aide gouvernementale limitent dangereusement.
All these increases resulting from an absence of government assistance dangerously limit our industry's ability to survive during the pandemic and seriously undermine any future recovery.
Transportation system. While the Prime Minister recognizes that our industry is one of the hardest hit, only limited support has come so far from the government. The financial update presented by the Minister of Finance on November 30th offered nothing in the way of financial relief to regional air carriers and little more than repeating promises of a process regarding financial assistance for the larger airlines. We have
written over half a dozen letters since March to the government, offering our full cooperation and finding comprehensive and viable solutions. We have not received a single acknowledgement.
Statement to the effect that the air sector cannot respond to these challenges on its own, given the unprecedented impact on its operations. The anticipated discussions would begin that week to establish a process with airlines regarding financial assistance. 3 weeks later, our members and many other key stakeholders are still waiting for this process to begin. So the question that the aviation industry has been asking for so long is, what's the government waiting for? We fear two things from an airline perspective. The first is that the government is simply waiting to see which air carriers survive and perhaps step in to help reestablish lost services, but at a great cost. Our other fear is the government will choose to help only the two largest carriers. That would demonstrate a profound lack of understanding of Canada's air transportation network and quickly lead to a significant and very long-lasting disruption of domestic scheduled air services. So many regions depend almost entirely on regional carriers as socioeconomic lifelines with the rest of Canada.
The support of regional air transport in the north was most welcome. However, much more needs to be done if regional air transport in Canada is to survive, as there are many other remote parts of the country that rely upon air transport as an essential service.
sweeping damage to the air industry, the government of Canada must set up a financial aid program immediately offering substantial, equitable, and easily accessible funds. Dedicate specific and adequate funding support also for the regional airlines. Provide NAV Canada with commensurate funding that the recent fee increases are designed to provide. Champion rapid COVID-19 testing programs and contact tracing for international arrivals and fully utilize the available science in reducing quarantine periods at Canada's major airports as quick as possible. Recognize that the December 12th implementation deadline for the new pilot flight and duty time regulations is totally unrealistic. Canadian carriers are already fighting for survival and operating within unprecedented travel restrictions and cannot achieve the necessary pilot training and software development and implementation, and most certainly are not able to bear the extra costs at this crucial time. A deferral to post-pandemic times will not jeopardize safety in any way, and there would not be any cost to the government or taxpayer. Order the Canadian Transportation Agency to work with carriers rather than forcing new APPR relations, which leaves carriers with little choice other than to cancel flights in the face of the agency's totally disconnected appreciation of the reality our industry is facing in complying with constantly changing government health restrictions on air travel. Our plea to the government is to support aviation when it most needs help, work with industry, increase interdepartmental cooperation efficiency, assume a leadership role in the coordination with provinces in finding Canada-wide solutions, and finally lift restrictions.
1 minute.
Service cuts have already been announced all over Canada, and more are to come unless something is done soon. Thank you for your time. I'll answer your questions. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. I will now go to Mr. Gooch. Mr. Gooch, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and for the study. I'm Daniel Gooch. I'm president of the Canadian Airports Council. We have 54 members that represent more than 100 airports around the country, including all of the privately operated National Airport System airports and many regional airports. We appreciate the opportunity to address you so soon after the fall economic statement. While we are still waiting on program details for much of it, our initial assessment is that airport measures are a positive first step, but insufficient to avoid serious challenges in the new year, such as additional rate and fee increases that nobody wants to see. Along with our sector partners, airports moved quickly when the pandemic began to invest in increased cleaning, social distancing, and to mandate masks indoors before anyone asked them to, and had implemented nearly all global ICAO standards before they were even released, all while watching the business collapse. Since April, passenger traffic in Canada has dropped about 90%. Today, the business is about 10 to 15% of normal. This has placed a big burden on our workers. It's thanks to them that our airports remain safe and healthy, and they are doing so under very difficult circumstances. The air sector has laid off about half of its employees. Most of Canada's airports are not subsidized by government. They rely on passenger revenues. All the services they provide, including emergency services, are supported by passenger revenue that has vanished. During an unprecedented crisis like this, the system simply cannot work. As travel restrictions and quarantines drag on into the winter, the outlook is bleak. Airports expect to incur more than $4.5 billion in lost revenue, and debt levels will increase by $2.8 billion by the end of 2021. With COVID-19 on the rise and full global vaccination sometime away, maybe years away, this will not be solved soon. Critical decisions must be made now if Canada's travel and tourism sector is to start recovery next summer, as we expect other Northern Hemisphere countries will. Summer 2021 simply cannot look like summer 2020. This is critical for regional airports and their communities. With route cancellations already announced by both Air Canada and WestJet, and potentially more to come, regional connectivity is under threat. Airports are part of a system. Airlines, NAV Canada, and other partners are hurting, and they need federal attention if our system is to recover. This is why we were hoping to see news in the FES on rapid antigen screening at airports. This is an essential piece that needs to be implemented for those who are traveling today and to return consumer confidence in the travel process when Canadians are ready to travel again in great numbers. We were pleased to see the FES announce $500 million to make critical investments in safety, security, and transit infrastructure at large airports. While this is a positive move, The money won't go far over 6 years, given the need and the size of some of these projects. The FES increased funding to the airport's capital assistance program by $93 million a year over 2 years. It provides important funding for small airports for safety and security related investments, so it is a positive move, but we do wonder how airports will be able to contribute their part, given they have run down their cash reserves. It is good to see $206 million for regional air routes, but we have no details, and regional connectivity is essential to the well-being of our communities, so we urgently want to understand more. On the airport ground rent paid by 22 airports, the CAC has sought multi-year waiver at the 8 busiest airports until business has recovered. We recommended government eliminate rent for the other 14 small airports, as they have never provided more than $15 million in revenue in any year to the federal government. This would make a big difference to those airports when revenue recovers. The federal government owns the land these 22 airports sit on, so rent is like a dividend they pay to their sole shareholder. It is a revenue-based charge that is very lucrative for the federal government in good years, providing $419 million in 2019 and $6.5 billion since 1992. In the FES, the largest 4 airports that pay 85% of the rent were only granted a deferral on 2021 rent to be repaid over 10 years beginning in 2024. Rent was waived just 1 more year for 12 mid-sized airports who pay about 15% of rent. While the 8 smallest rent-paying airports were given 3 more years of rent relief, this represents 0.3% of rent paid in good years. And none of these airports were expecting to pay any rent in 2021 because they won't make enough money to trigger it. This is helpful, but airports won't receive any cash from this. It means that these airports will be able to not pay the federal government its dividend for 1 year longer. But we expect recovery to take as long as 5 years. Rent really needs to be waived beyond 2020 as the sector recovers. Then these funds can be used to pay down debt accrued through the pandemic. And I must note that most airports pay no rent, which is why we also asked for interest-free loans or direct operational support. The FES did announce a highly affected sector's credit availability program, but its cap of $1 million is insufficient to help many airports. The very small airports it might be able to help include a lot of municipal airports, which have been excluded from federal COVID programs so far.
Mr. Cooch, if you can wrap it up.
To conclude, no matter where you live in Canada, the air sector is essential to putting our economy back on track, and airports are a key part of that. We need them to be ready for every journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Well done. I'll now move on to Mr. Riviere. Mr. Riviere, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity today to present the TREC initiative.
Of the COVID-19 crisis on many industry, you have for sure today been presented the impact of on the airline and the airports of our country. This unprecedented crisis may also be viewed as to create the opportunity to rethink our domestic travel transportation system. As you may know, a large part of the country is poorly serviced on the regional level. More specifically, the East, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces don't have a normal regional service. Everyone knows about the high price of tickets, but what's more important to know is the impact of these prices on utilization. The IATA and the Stats Canada revealed the magnitude of the dysfunction of our regional air transportation this side of the country. There is 5 times more passenger per capita flying point to point on regional carriers in Ontario than in Quebec. On the domestic side, just to bring us back to the national level, Quebec is missing 10 million passengers in its airport. What we're saying, while the rest of the country and the continent is using air transportation for their need of long-distance travel, the east of Canada is either driving 6 to 12 hours to get to a meeting or a medical appointment, or worse, we don't travel. This goes to our ability to occupy our territory, develop our economy, our tourism industry, or just to provide quality of life to many remote community this side of the country. Our project mission is to correct the situation for the province of Quebec. We're breaking away from the paradigm by using a collective approach, making the regions and their community at the center of our governance. Our model will combine the drive of the private sector and the nobleness of the public sector. That model is a co-op, and it's the co-op of Transport Régional du Québec. And without going into the detail of what it looks like, our model is similar to a Porter airline in Ontario, and we would be flying 78-seater Q400 starting June 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riviere. We're now going to go on to Mr. McNanny. Mr. McNanny, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will get this in at 4 minutes and 45 seconds. The National Airlines Council of Canada represents Canada's largest air carriers, Air Canada, Air Transat, Jazz Aviation, and WestJet. That represents approximately 90% of domestic capacity and about 60% of international. In 2019, our members carried over 80 million passengers to communities across the country and the world. They employed over 60,000 Canadians directly, and over the past decade had built a level of connectivity and service, regionally, domestically, and internationally, that supported more than 630,000 jobs in the overall transport, tourism, and aerospace economy. But as we are all brutally aware, none of these numbers reflect current reality. Today, tens of thousands of employees have lost their jobs, billions of dollars in aircraft are parked, 80% of capacity is shut down, and passenger numbers have crumbled to 10% of typical levels, with no line of sight on when things may begin to recover. But the path to stabilizing the aviation sector is actually quite clear. It is clear because basically every other country in the world has already started down this path and did so months ago. Canada is indeed an outlier. There have been some measures instituted and others announced this week, but almost 1 year into the crisis, and my members started to be impacted in January, we are still talking about a process for establishing financial assistance. Meanwhile, countries around the world have already provided $173 billion US in support to their aviation sectors, precisely because of the critical role aviation must play in their respective economic recoveries. While this support has taken various forms, at its most basic, it consists of financial measures to stabilize the industry, promotion of rapid testing within aviation and travel, and taking a science-based approach to quarantine in conjunction with testing. Since the spring, we have been asking the government to provide low-interest loans and loan guarantees. We have also asked the government to address liquidity challenges within the broader sector, including airports and government service providers such as NAV Canada. As astounding as it may seem, in the midst of this pandemic and its incredible demand destruction, airlines were hit with a 29.5% tax increase in September for air navigation services, as NAV Canada tries to address its own financial shortfall, with the government refusing to provide assistance. Though our requests for liquidity support have not been addressed, we have not stood still and simply waited for government action. Over the past few months, airports and Air Canada and WestJet have led the development and implementation of testing projects at Pearson Airport, Calgary International Airport, and Vancouver International Airport in order to provide government with further data to enable science-based decisions concerning quarantine. As members of the committee heard on Tuesday, federal departments are being fully engaged on these projects, and we are hopeful that the Calgary initiative in particular, given the extensive involvement of the Alberta government, will provide a model for implementation in other provinces. As we continue to work to drive further action on testing and database decision-making, and continue to implement the myriad of measures required by Transport Canada to protect passenger and employee health, which again members also heard about on Tuesday, we are very appreciative of the statements made recently by Dr. Tam that the risk of transmission of COVID-19 on aircraft is low. But while we try to move Canada down the clear path presented by other governments, the economic situation continues to deteriorate. Canada has now lost approximately 85% of its connectivity, with flights significantly reduced or service eliminated across every region of the country as carriers try to preserve liquidity in some semblance of operation. My members have spent years and invested billions of dollars building regional and international networks to create the level of connectivity our economy enjoyed at the end of 2019, and the level of connectivity that will be required to ensure our overall economic recovery across every region of Canada. But that investment, and much more importantly, the tens of thousands of direct jobs it entails, are being systematically eroded. In addition, we have now begun to see foreign carriers who have received liquidity support from their governments taking international market share from Canadian operators. This is a direct threat to the future competitiveness of the sector and may roll back years of successful international expansion. In closing, over the past several weeks, we have seen heartfelt demonstrations by aviation workers who have lost their jobs and appeals by aviation unions for government action. We have also seen the government statement concerning refunds as a condition for financial assistance, as well as statements by ministers that they realize the industry will not be able to move forward without government assistance. The objective here is not just to have the sector survive, it is to have a competitive, thriving industry that drives jobs and investment and quality of life in every region of the country, in every community, large and small. The overall path ahead is very difficult, but it is clear. The rest of the world is on it. We need to join them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNanny. 4 minutes and 26 seconds. Well done. You beat it by a couple seconds. Good job.
Thank you.
I'm now going to go on to Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee regarding the effects of COVID-19 on the aviation sector, and in particular for us today to address the staggering impact on community and regional airports across our country. My name is Brian Grant, Chair of the Regional Community Airports of Canada, and I am joined by Mr. Todd Tripp. We are CEOs from regional airports located in northwestern Alberta and northeastern Ontario. Our organization represents a unique sector of the industry as airports which provide local and regional transportation infrastructure and services in support of rural and remote areas of our vast country for services including emergency health, cargo shipment, forest firefighting, passenger connections between communities and larger links for the domestic and transborder international destinations. Our membership is comprised of airports that move 500,000 passengers or less annually. In essence, our airports support the necessary transportation for economic development and acceptable qualities of life for Canadians who deserve it no matter where they live. Many Canadians in various levels of government hear of air transportation and they think of airlines that move people and goods. In reality, air service includes much more, with airports, cargo and baggage handling, refueling, air navigation, and more playing essential roles in providing jobs in the local economies. The COVID-19 pandemic has inflicted debilitating effects on passenger traffic and business sustainability in all sectors of aviation, and in particularly on the regional components of the system. Airports are subject to stringent regulations imposed by the federal government, which are necessary for the safe and effective movement of aircraft and passengers. We are faced with limited abilities to reduce our operating costs, where our sole sources of revenue continue to be stifled by COVID outbreaks and restrictions. The vast majority of regional and community airports are experiencing in excess of 90% loss in passenger travel and over 70% loss in revenues. Most of these airports are experiencing less than 25% of the pre-COVID flights, and in some cases have lost their passenger service completely. This pandemic has caused airports to drain financial reserves and that may have existed and are now pushing airports to reduce availability of infrastructure, reduce levels of service, and lay off essential staff to face the continuing pressures of COVID-19. A recent report compiled by the RCAC in May 2020 identified 46 airports that suffered total loss of airline service by the end of April. Additionally, 11 airports experienced a loss of flight reductions in excess of 90% to the compared time in January 2020. And further 79%, excuse me, and further 79 airports saw in excess of 80% of their flights reduced. Many of the conditions remain today and will throughout the entire pandemic. Industry analysts indicate recovery will take 2 to 4 years. Nearly all assistance programs and announcements to date are not applicable to rural and regional airports, as these airports are ineligible to apply for the help. Immediate priorities must include a review of the current eligibility requirements for the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy to include airports regardless of their ownership or governance models. Sustainable funding to replace the lost revenues to ensure local infrastructure remains open and rates and fees remain low to support the airline recovery. An immediate increase to the airport's capital assistance program for small airports to $95 million annually for the next 5-year period, and a removal of the required contribution shares for these airports in the next 2 years. Airports' access to regional air service programs is essential to enable airports to reduce rates and fees and bolster air service. Our federal government, as regulator, holds sole jurisdiction over the aviation industry. It is critical that a holistic approach to the impacts of this pandemic be applied to ensure survival of aviation in Canada. In closing, airports are the foundation of our air service in the country. Without safe, secure, and accessible airports, the efforts made to sustain other sectors of the aviation industry cannot be successful. Thank you, and I'm able to take questions.
And thank you, Mr. Grant. Well done. We're now going to go to our first round. We have Ms. Cusi from the Conservatives, Mr. Biddle from the Liberals, Mr. Barcelou-Duval from the Bloc, and Mr. Bachrach from the NDP. Ms. Cusi, 6 minutes. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to all of our witnesses. Merci aux témoins qui sont ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you to the witnesses who are here today.
I want to express my complete disappointment as the vice chair of this committee and member of the official opposition of the government's response to all of you and your employees. And I can't tell you what an honor it has been to advocate for them. I know you do it well, but it has truly been an honor, and how touching it is when I receive their messages, and heartbreaking to receive their pictures of them in uniform holding their children. So with that, I'll move to Mr. McNaney first. Very nice to see you, Mike, always. Question number one. The government introduced the LEF, and they talked a lot about this as a potential financing tool, but many of your members didn't apply. Why did they not apply for the large employer emergency financing facility, please?
Thank you for the question, and nice to see you too. I think there's a few elements to it. The general view was that LEAF was never set up to deal with the challenge that we are facing.
N'avait jamais été conçu pour des grands exploitants, étant donné la grandeur de la compagnie.
Mr. Clerk,
my earpiece here.
Excuse me, Mr. Clerk, we're getting the French translation, or the French and the English at the same time. If we can ask interpretation about that.
Yeah, we're guys check that out.
Just give me a second, guys. We're just going to check with IT.
I think he has to put it on the French channel.
Mr. McNaney, when you were speaking, I believe it was Mr. McNaney who was speaking.
Yes.
Did you have it in English or French?
English.
English. Okay, let's try this again. I'm going to go with it, clerk. Ms. Cusi, I did stop the time for you, so you're fine. Carry on, Mr. McNaney.
Okay, thank you. There was a couple of reasons to it, and I'm not getting the other translation, so it's working. We didn't think that LEAF was necessarily set up for large organizations. Of course, it is just for large employers that have been stuck at stage 0 on the economic recovery continuum since the beginning of the pandemic. All the measures that applied in March and April, from a travel perspective, a border measures perspective, are all still in place. So we have never been moving forward on the economic continuum. Also, the terms and conditions of it, and you've seen this stated publicly by various companies, were not consistent with the depth and scope of the crisis we have been facing. So what we started to write to the government about in midsummer was the request for low interest loans and loan guarantees that would be available to all in the sector and would be structured such that there could not be any potential competitive impact on the sector overall.
So thank you very much, Chair. I want to go back to something you talked about, Mr. McNaney, and that is the long-term impacts of the lack of government's assistance for your members. Can you expand upon that, please? What do you suspect the long-term impacts will be as regarding this government's inaction?
Mr. McNaney.
Thank you. We are starting to see the impacts now, and it is unnerving for us from a commercial perspective, and it should be unnerving for us broadly from an economic recovery perspective as well. So as I mentioned in my opening comments, we are seeing foreign carriers who have started to receive support from their governments and started to receive it around May and June. They have now started to take a greater share of international markets from Canadian carriers. And my members spent years, as I said, in billions of dollars building up that network connectivity and that international competitiveness. We have a very small domestic market in Canada. We need every internationally successful company, regardless of the sector. We need every international successful company we can get our hands on. So we are seeing our competitiveness internationally being eroded. And what you are also seeing then, and this has been discussed by others earlier, we are also starting to see then that internal domestic connectivity and the ability to actually support our overall economy and moving forward in the recovery is absolutely also going to be undermined. And we will not be able to turn on a dime to bring back all this capacity and all the billions of dollars worth of aircraft and the tens of thousands of employees. It's going to take us quite some time to do that. That's why it has been so critical in these other jurisdictions that they have provided this interim support on an interim financial support, so the aviation sector can stabilize itself and then get ready for that future development and future competitiveness that obviously we're all hoping occurs as we get to the other side of the pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. McNanny. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Gooch, in your opinion, is it feasible to implement rapid testing before departure for domestic flights at our other large airports across the country with the right supports?
Mr.
Thank you,
McNanny.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzi, and good to see you again. Thank you for all
Nice
your
to see
support.
you.
We are looking to see rapid antigen testing expanded to more airports, and I know our member airports are working with provincial health authorities and the federal government to make that happen as quickly as we can make it happen. We're really focused primarily on international air travel primarily, but of course there are some parts of the country where domestic travel is really quite suppressed, even more than the average at this point. Manitoba, for example, Atlantic Canada, for example. I know at least in Atlantic Canada, our members are urgently calling for rapid testing to be introduced into those airports so that we can make travelers even safer than they already are, and provide greater confidence to travelers in the safety of air travel. We have a few short months to get this in place if we are going to have it in place in time for the summer season. We do believe that there will be other countries in the Northern Hemisphere that are going to start to see a recovery in travel and tourism in the summer, and we're not sure yet if Canada is going to be able to participate in that.
So in your Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Gooch, in your opinion, it is feasible to implement a pilot project like the one at YYC at all the large airports for international arrivals?
There is a great appetite to expand what we've seen in Calgary to other parts of the country, and certainly our airports and our air carrier partners are there, ready, willing, and able to help.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Thank you, Ms. Kusi.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Biddle. Mr. Biddle, the floor is yours. 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And for the National Airlines Council, I understand that the airlines are seeking, and your members are seeking, billions of dollars of taxpayer assistance to deal with this crisis. But at the same time, I've read some media reports that some of your members are reluctant to open their books. Is that true?
Mr. Gooch.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think that's to me. I haven't seen those same media reports. I know that the government has said and repeated a couple of days ago that it is beginning confidential conversations because of the nature of the discussions and the commercial activity that they'll have to get into. So I fully assume that that is going to proceed on the pace and tone that the government wishes to do so.
Okay, so you would agree then that it's reasonable that if the Canadian taxpayers are going to provide billions of dollars, that they should, on a confidential basis, the Transport Canada should be able to access those books. The Government of Canada should have access to that.
Mr. McNanny.
I think it's reasonable that the government and the individual companies will confidentially discuss all the details that they need to discuss in order to ultimately get to a conclusion that hopefully provides support for aviation.
Answer. So is that
of people who have lost their jobs?
Excuse me. So that really wasn't an answer. So is it reasonable or unreasonable?
It is absolutely reasonable for both parties to be able to have a deep conversation about what is needed. I haven't seen those media reports, sir, so I'm afraid I can't speak to those.
So you won't speak. So even as a taxpayer, you don't. Would it be reasonable to assume that books be opened if a industry is looking for a significant aid package from the government? I'm surprised this is taking this many questions to get to something I thought would be an easy yes.
Well, I think we're generally saying the same thing. We might just be putting the emphasis on a different syllable. I think it's perfectly legitimate for the government to be looking for the information it needs to provide for the loans that are necessary. Yes.
Thank you. I think it's disappointing that you're evading the question on whether the major airlines should be opening up their books and sharing that, and just it seems like there's a willingness to just demand a blank check. But maybe I'll move on to the next point. Do you think that there should that any financial assistance should be tied with restrictions on executive compensation?
I think the government is going to have the opportunity to put whatever conditions it deems fit. I'm in an awkward position in that we are talking about support, which is not defined, and scope of support and what that might be that is not defined. So in terms of loans and loan guarantees, as I said, yes, the government should be able to access the information it needs to determine that those loans and loan guarantees are necessary and whatever that might entail. And in terms of the other conditions the government wishes to put upon it, that'll be the government's decision, and then it'll be up to each company to decide how it wishes to proceed.
So you would agree it would be within reason to be reasonable to make conditions on maintaining staffing levels or to honor contracts with Canadian aerospace firms?
Well, thank you, sir. What you're asking me to comment, you're asking me to comment on conditions for something that does not yet exist. I mean, it's a bit like asking me to comment on conditions for the sale of a house that hasn't been built and the plans for which I have not seen. I think it is absolutely legitimate for the government to conclude whichever questions and whatever added information it believes it needs to determine the path forward. And that whatever those conditions might be, then companies will have to decide how they will proceed with it. So in a broad sense, yes to the various points you're making, but I'm not familiar with the particular individual stories that you're referencing.
Thank you.
2 minutes, Mr. Biddle.
Sorry?
2 minutes, Mr. Biddle.
Okay, thank you. You seem to suggest that there's been no support. I'm wondering if you can provide me, if you have that information at your fingertips, and if not, maybe you can provide it later, how much your members have received from the government with respect to the the wage subsidy.
Sure, and just to be clear, I didn't say there was no support. I actually said in my comments that support has been provided and that further was announced a couple of days ago. Our principal point on it is that it is not in line with what we're going to need to actually have the recovery that we hope to have and bring back the tens of thousands of jobs that have been lost. The members have availed themselves of queues and have publicly stated their thanks for that, and we're not diminishing that contribution. But our point is that there's going to be a great deal more that's required to be done. And that is based on what we are seeing in other countries as they move forward to stabilize the sector and prepare for the overall economic recovery.
I'd like to clarify something that you said. You talked about a tax increase with respect to NAV Canada. You agree with me that the government did not raise taxes, that NAV Canada is an independent agency?
I would take a look at NAV Canada's press release from May. They did state in there that they had engaged the government to try and get support so that they would not have to follow through with the increase in navigational fees. And the government has said no to that request.
That was my question. It's not a tax increase.
Well, I think to be mildly direct, I think within the context of Ottawa debate, the fee and the tax are two different things, but has it increased the cost of aviation and flying in Canada? And yes, it has. Whether you wish to call it a fee or a tax, to us in the industry, it's somewhat immaterial.
Well, when you're calling it a tax, you're suggesting it's the government levying that and not an independent agency, and I'm just surprised at the language used.
Well, it's an independent agency, sir, that derives its mandate from a statute of Parliament and has a monopoly on the service provision of navigational services for safety purposes, obviously. So its entire mandate flows from the federal government, and the federal government has representation with NAV Canada. So again, for the industry, honestly, whether it's a fee or it's a tax, the NAV Canada went to the government and did not receive support in the midst of this crisis. So they brought a 29.5% increase, and that only represents a third of the budget shortfall they are projecting. And that is all in the public realm through their release in the summer.
Thank you, Mr. McNanny. Thank you, Mr. Biddle. We're now going to go on to Mr. Brusseau-Duval. Mr. Brusseau-Duval, for 6 minutes, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My first question will be for Mr. Larivière. Mr. Larivière, we just talked about the whole issue of the smaller airlines with COVID-19. There have been small companies in Quebec that have been abandoned, and following this, small towns rather, that were abandoned by the bigger airlines, and this is how you started up your project to have the regional service. and something that would be available to the regions other than Air Canada's services, for example. So in the information that we heard from the minister, there seemed to be a willingness to refund tickets, but there was another condition that might be imposed. That there should be assistance to regional airlines. So how do you see the fact that we want to finance regional travel offered by larger companies through this? So what effect could this have on your project for regional transport? Thank you very much for the question. I'd answer it by saying that it would create a missed opportunity, as you'd say in English. That is to say that for the case of Quebec, because it's maybe different elsewhere in Canada, but in Quebec, to force Canada to come back to routes that they have abandoned, it's forcing a carrier that doesn't have a primary mission of providing regional service into those areas of Quebec. Air Canada's mission, and in fact its business model, which they do very well, by the way, is a different thing, and the regional aspect of it is really not to feed the hub. They're sending their flights primarily to Montreal for the province of Quebec. So we think it would be a bad decision for the government of Canada to force something that's just not natural. And the reason why Air Canada dropped a lot of these regional routes in Quebec, and they reduced their offer of service as well. But this was a trigger for us. The problem with regional service in Quebec is something that goes back to way before COVID. So maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back for the Quebec regions. But TREC is a project that is intended to reach out to all of the regions. We don't want to go back in time. I mean, Air Canada could be forced to do what they don't want to do, or we find another solution and turn away from that monopoly. For us, the reality that we've seen over the last 30 years in Quebec, this monopoly just doesn't work for us. So we're looking at the problem from a different angle. You know, in Quebec, Mr. Barcelou-Duval? Yes, thank you. I might let you just carry on a bit longer, Mr. Larivière. I had a second question, but currently you raised the issue of monopolies. For example, in Quebec, there's the Air Canada monopoly that's setting up in other areas and creating some competition. So the government's desire to force Air Canada to work to send flights into the regions again, would that not just reestablish that monopoly and then compete with you in the project that you have that could be competitive in the regions? Well, I think that the best work that the government could ensure they do is to maintain. The interpreter regrets there was a bit missing in that sentence. On the contrary, they should be allowed to put flights into the regions, but not through a sort of anti-dumping. We need to have competition, and this was the problem over the last 30 years. So now we're seeing a missed opportunity. So do we try and set this up? But we have to ask ourselves the question, will Air Canada in 3 or 4 years' time use some other techniques to not carry on with that? And that would be very bad for aviation in our province. Thank you very much. Next question maybe for you. You have managed airports in the past, and you saw the measures that were announced by the government for airports. Do you think it will be enough to help them, given that what we've seen mainly is money for infrastructure in the future? Will that help buy groceries and pay the bills today? Well, indeed. I do have another hat that I wear. I'm the operator of the Mont-Tremblant Airport. And I agree with my colleagues from the other regional airports. We are seeing a disaster for regional airports currently. That's what we're experiencing. So the loss of our strategic efforts for our employees, especially, regional airports, the person who clears the snow from the runway is also the person who does refueling, who does the weather reports, and, it takes years to train these people. So the day that we lose them, it means we'll have to spend years more training other people to take over for them. And so for several of the smaller airports, we're not talking about large amounts of money to ensure that they can stay in place and be there for the future. So I agree with Mr. Gooch, Mr. McKenna, and Mr. Grant on the necessity or the need for supporting all airports, and there have been efforts made for the major airports, but the government really needs to help all regional airports as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Larivière. My question would be for ATAC or maybe for CAC.
So Duval, my apologies. The time's up. I now have to go to Mr. Bachrach. Great questions, and thank you, Mr. Larivière. Now, Mr. Bachrach, 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start with some questions for Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, as I'm sure you're aware, small airports are vital to the quality of life in Northwest British Columbia, the region I'm so pleased to represent. And airports in communities like Smithers, Terrace, Sandspit, Bella Bella, Bella Coola have all struggled during the pandemic. But I wanted to step back a little bit because a lot of these small and regional airports were originally owned and operated by the federal government and were downloaded to local governments to run several years ago. My first question is, has the federal government provided communities and local governments with adequate resources to operate these airports in a way that is safe and provides the services that citizens expect?
Mr. Grant?
I think the easy answer is no. Certainly, there has been some attempt by the federal government to fulfill its mandate in giving us some capital funding, but airports, just like you've mentioned, in a large majority have not been able to even participate because the funds simply aren't there to match the contribution agreements. So there's been nothing in the way of operational support since the late 1990s. These airports were transferred strictly to municipalities and local community governments. And the load is being bared by them.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Now, you mentioned earlier that these small airports really suffered because they weren't able to access some of the pandemic support that was offered by the federal government, especially the wage subsidy. Now, I'm assuming that your organization advocated to the federal government that municipal airports should qualify for that funding. What was their response?
We certainly did advocate, and we did identify that there basically has been no ability for small and regional airports to take advantage of many of the programs. And when we did mention that we needed to address the issue with the queues, we have still not gotten an answer to that. We have not got an idea of if and when that may even be discussed.
Mr. Bachrach?
Do you think it's fair that the larger airports are able to access the wage subsidy where small and regional airports haven't been able to?
I wouldn't say it's an issue of fairness. I think it's simply an issue of education and not being able to understand that there are other airports out there. Certainly the large airports, we feed them and they need to have that support. But smaller airports seem to have been carved away and forgotten about as being just a regional cost center. And so we haven't really got any attention from the federal government.
Mr. Bachrach?
Mr. Grant, you mentioned earlier the ACAP program. Obviously, this program, and as a former mayor, I can attest to the importance of this program. The reality is that funding for ACAP has been stalled for decades at about $38 million per year. I understand you're advocating for an increase to $95 million per year. What's that number based on, and what would that kind of stable, permanent funding allow small regional airports to do in their operations?
I think the important part is that the Airports Capital Assistance Program has not been topped up since the early 2000s. Simply the $95 million that we've advocated for over the past 4 years, as a matter of fact, simply addresses the infrastructure inflation rates in order to accommodate providing the rehabilitation of most of our infrastructure. And so at this time, the 95 million, if it is accessible to more participants, or if it's accessible to more airports at a lower contribution rate, even the 95 million won't do it. So we're certainly, that's an adjustment just to meet the current inflationary demand since 2001.
Mr. Bachrach?
Thanks very much, Mr. Grant. Now, the ACAP dollars, if I understand correctly, there it's 90% funding from the federal government, and the airports themselves have to kick in another 10%. Is it challenging for small communities and municipalities to come up with that 10% through revenue tools like property tax?
Actually, the Airports Capital Assistance Program funding is on a sliding scale. So the more passengers you move, the less contribution the federal government gives you. And even for those that are 100% funded with small passenger movements, the application process to get a project approved costs money. It costs those airports and those communities money to have pre-design studies done so that you can identify that you have a plan and a project that needs to be done. So many of those airports, Smithers is a prime example that I've talked to lately, that they simply do not invest in getting the application ready because it's $25,000 or $30,000 out of their pocket with no guarantees for 5 years.
So is it fair to say that that's why you're advocating for the funding to be 100% during the pandemic to help those small airports get the funding they need for capital upgrades and safety upgrades, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, and I can speak to personal experience right here at my own home airport, where we have lost 90% of our traffic movements, 75% of our revenues, and we're at a 25 and 30% contribution rate from the federal government to us. So yes, 100%. They can add all the money they like to the program, but if it's not 100% fundable, we can't access it. And we are advocating and have been for a number of years on changing the requirements around application processes. So it's not just money, it's the ability to access the money.
30 seconds, Mr. Bachrach.
Thanks, Mr. Grant. Last question. NAVCAN announced it's cutting air traffic services at 7 regional airports. What will the impact of this be, and is this a safety concern?
For some airports and some communities, it certainly is a safety concern. For others, it's not as much a safety concern as having the appropriate tools and technology when that service leaves. And there is no avenue to fund that at this point, even through the ACAP program. So automated weather stations and automated lighting controls, it's important that we have the ability to fund those before anything is decided by the way of removing service. And that is a serious safety issue.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Great questions. We're now going to move on to our second round for 5 minutes each. Mr. Cram from the Conservatives, Mr. Seydoux from the Liberals, and 2.5 minutes from Mr. Barcelou-Duval from the Bloc Québécois, and Mr. Bachrach from the NDP. So we're going to start off for 5 minutes. Mr. Cram, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for the witnesses from the Canadian Airports Council and the Regional Community Airports of Canada. For the past 8 months, the government has been talking at a high level about its plan to save Canada's airports from bankruptcy. Then on Monday, Minister Freeland delivered her fall economic statement, which included a section about support for the air sector. And this section describes funding for health and safety infrastructure and for transit infrastructure, as well as waiving or deferring lease payments for the next few years. Do you feel that the government's plan to save Canada's airports from bankruptcy meets your needs? And if not, why not?
Go ahead.
I'll take that. The $500 million that you describe certainly will be very helpful. We recommended that. In fact, we recommended most of what was in there. It just was not at level sufficient for our nation's airports to avoid real serious challenges next year. That money will be very valuable. Certainly, there's a big project in Montreal, but the price tag for that project is $600 million. We have $225 million in additional runway investments that need to be made to add runway and safety areas. It's a federal regulation that's coming into place. We've got airports that are installing making investments into accessibility upgrades because of regulations that are coming into place. Our members do not oppose these regulations, but they do wonder how they're going to be able to pay for them. In terms of the rent relief, we've been saying for quite some time, it really does need to be an actual waiver of rent, and it needs to be for multiple years if it's to have a meaningful impact. And even with that, for the 14 smallest airports, including Regina and your community, rent relief when a waiver on rent when rent is a revenue charge and you're not bringing in but a fraction of what you were making is not as valuable as it would be in year 2, year 3, year 4 when traffic is actually starting to recover and those volumes and those revenues that come with it are starting to recover. As a result, airports are taking on debt, $2.8 billion in debt that needs to be repaid. The situation is kind of bizarre. If the government was to give an airport $10 million, that's $10 million in revenue they do not need to raise in another way. If the airport doesn't get that and they have to borrow that money, when they have to pay interest on that back. So actually, the federal government makes more money when the airport doesn't have any. Doesn't have relief and has to borrow, because for every dollar that the airport has to generate to pay back in revenue in debt, it's also paying back in interest, and the federal government gets a cut on every one of those dollars. So the situation is very difficult. It's not sustainable, certainly without additional support for airports.
Mr. Cram.
Okay, thank you. And last week, I guess I should follow up on a question my colleague, Mr. Bacharach, asked. Last week, various news outlets reported that NAV Canada was planning to shut down the air traffic control towers at the airports in, I believe it was Whitehorse, Prince George, Fort McMurray, Regina, Sault Ste. Marie, Windsor, and Saint Jean, Quebec. Could the witnesses representing the airports give us an idea of what it means for the airport's capacity to attract new flights and new carriers when the airport does not have an air traffic control tower? And can the other witnesses representing the airlines give us an idea of what it means to the airlines who want to increase services to an airport when that airport does not have an air traffic control tower?
Gentlemen.
Brian, do you want to take that one first?
I think from a perspective of our members in regional and community airports, air traffic control towers certainly have not been the catalyst as to whether or not we receive service. Those areas at this time are just simply trying to get by and ensure that they can keep the fees to keep those airlines flying in. I think that's a better question for the carriers, especially to identify how they do work with those situations.
1 minute.
And I'm sorry, Chair, do I have the floor again?
You do? You have 1 minute, Mr. Cram.
Okay, well then I would like to hear an answer from my previous question from the witnesses representing the airlines about, as we come out of the pandemic, if an airport does not have an air traffic control tower, how does that impact the airline's ability to increase flights to the airport?
I'll just go quickly and then to my colleague John. Our principal concern about anything with respect to ATC, air traffic control and navigation, is with respect to safety and safety of operations. You do absolutely look at the coverage you're going to get and the times of days that you'll get coverage and whether your alternates will actually be covered in order to fly service. So it can have a commercial implication, but ultimately you're most focused on safety and the provision of safety services. And I think that does come back to my earlier comments about NAV Canada needing support.
Thank you, Mr. McNanny. Thank you, Mr. Cram. I'll now move on to Mr. Sadhu for 5 minutes. Mr. Sadhu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being with us today. My question is for Mr. McKenna and Mr. Gooch. What lessons do you think should be drawn from, the EU experience of relaxing travel quarantines, only to have them reimpose them when the second wave hit? Mr. McKenna, if you can start.
Well, the only answer to that I can see is that they are, you can't continuously do that. Obviously, if we're going to relax measures, it's because you have measures in place that allow you to do it, regardless of what happens. So, I think that we have to avoid that at all costs.
Mr. Sadhu.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Gooch, can I get your thoughts on that as well?
Mr. Gooch.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the individual measures that might have been put in place in different European places and whether they were effective. I do know that what we have been calling for is for rapid antigen testing to be put onto flights so that travelers can have that additional degree of confidence. What we have seen from the studies that have taken place so far is that there is a very, very small number of travelers who have been testing positive. Those the less than 1% who are testing positive. Well, what we've had now is testing on international arrivals. It would be even better to have it prior to departure. And there's many different ways to design that. Obviously, the best way would be to have a very accurate pre-departure antigen test. There's other places that have combined that with, say, a test several days prior to departure, and then a rapid test actually at the airport. I mean, there's different ways of doing it.
Thank you for that. You mentioned, Mr. How much time do I have left?
You have, you split your time?
Yes, I am.
You have about 60 seconds.
Okay. You mentioned, Mr. Gooch, rapid testing. We did dispatch a bunch of rapid tests, millions of rapid tests to the provinces, and to my understanding, there's a reluctance to use them as they are not as reliable as lab tests. Are you concerned about the accuracy of these tests, and what are your thoughts on rapid testing?
Well, I'm certainly not a public health expert. My understanding is that there are several tests that have been approved for Canada, and there are others that are on the way. As I was referring earlier, there are ways to some places are combining a more accurate PCR test, say a couple of days prior to departure, and then combining that in with an antigen test. But we really need to move to actually having conversations about how to do this. It's with our colleagues from the air carriers. This is something that we've been looking to advance a discussion on, since the spring. We now are having these conversations, but we don't have a lot of time ahead of us if we are to rescue Canada's tourism sector next summer. We believe other countries, as people are getting vaccinated and as pent up demand for travel, starts to materialize next year, we do think we're going to see Canadians wanting to travel, other people wanting to travel, and we want to make sure that they can do so and feel even safer with a test.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Mr. O'Curry.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses here. The airline sector is essential for our regions, and it is an engine for development of our economy, particularly for a big country like Canada. My question is for Mr. Larivière. The fall economic statement announced up to $206 million over 2 years for regional development agencies for new and regional initiatives in terms of transport. So, Mr. Larivière, I wonder if you foresee how you might spend this money and what should be the priorities in terms concerning these funds. Mr. Larivière. Well, thank you for your question. We salute this aspect of the economic statement. We need to see the details, however, of what's allowed and what isn't in that budget envelope, and which economic development agency will be leading that project. We can well imagine whether it's our project or someone else's would be stimulated, and we can see access to the regions with the means that if they are given the means rather to do so. Now, there's a window of opportunity that's most interesting here. Mr. Gooch just made allusion to that. There will be willingness in the next months and years for people who want to stay in Canada and travel within the country. We had wonderful visits to our regions that we haven't done for a long time. So a lot of people are discovering that Canada is a huge country. The interpreter regrets there are too many words missing here with
supporté tout à l'heure.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead. Point of order.
I think we're having some technical issues, which is leading to some translation issues.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop the clock here, Mr. Clerk.
Yeah, we think it should be okay if he tries again. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Lariviere, if you can close out your answer, please.
Oui, bon, ce que je mentionnais en réponse.
What I was saying in answer was that within that budgetary envelope that was announced in the fall economic statement on Monday, we need to see what the details are to know what it means. But that might give us a most interesting tool for initiatives like mine, but others across the country, to take over that space and to ensure that we give quality access to flights at good prices across the country, and particularly in Quebec. And I was repeating what Mr. Gosh said.
Thank you, Mr. Lariviere. Thank you, Mr. Sadu, and thank you, Mr. Alcuri. We're now going to go on to Mr. Barcelou-Duval for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Barcelou-Duval, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question will be for Mr. McKenna. Currently, the government, in my opinion, is working on potential help for the aviation sector, and there might be help for regional transporters and for airports. There might be some funds for infrastructure some years down the road. So are your members worried by the fact that it might be just the big players who can take advantage of this monies? Well, we're certainly not against assistance for the major players. We want the whole industry to benefit. But we just want to make sure that there's money for the little players as well, the smaller players with regional centres in Canada. Yes, it worries us greatly. We have no information. There's no dialogue with the government on all of this. We provided a huge amount of information to them since July and August, financial data on job losses, etc. But nothing comes back to us. There's no dialogue with them, with politicians in terms of these kinds of assistance programs. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. My next question is for Mr. McKenney. Other countries have put forward programs to help the aviation sector, and we're still waiting here. So the only carrier that's benefiting is Air Canada. Do you understand what the problem is? Why doesn't the government have a plan to help the industry?
I'm not quite sure that I quite follow the premise there in terms of only one operator to be benefiting at the moment. I think the entire industry is in dire condition. And if I just might make a quick point, it does seem that there's an element of our conversation here as we're looking at different aspects of the aviation community. It is taking on a bit of a Hunger Games competition between sizes and small and large, and that is not our intent at all for appearing before you today. In terms of the amount of time it has taken for the federal government, I think the federal government is the only one who can answer that question. We have certainly been hoping that there would have been action. But the other piece that I really do want to stress for this committee, and it has come up and Daniel has addressed it and others have addressed it, is that there is the financial piece to this, and that is very important, and I certainly understand the interest in it, but there's absolutely that preparatory work, and it is all going to be tied to testing, and it's going to be tied to border measures, and it's going to be tied to quarantine levels, and that is going to be equally critical if we're going to get forward and be able to pull in all the jobs from the different size airports, the different size carriers that we're talking about here. So I do hope that in your report and your engagement with government, you will place a very strong emphasis on the steps that need to be taken for the recovery. And has been outlined, Daniel, and as noted, airlines and airports across the country are working very closely on trying to drive that in conjunction with provincial health authorities and federal health authorities.
Thank you, Mr. McNanny. Thank you, Mr. Barcelou-Duval. We're now going to move on to Mr. Bachrach for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll continue with some questions for Mr. McNaney. Mr. McNaney, several of the airlines were utilizing the wage subsidy during the pandemic and then went off the wage subsidy. And my question is, currently the sector is looking for federal support, but is not using the federal program that is set up to help ensure that employees are kept on the payroll, et cetera. Can you explain why that is?
Thank you for the question. And I can't speak to any particular carrier's operations, obviously, in the decisions it has made. But at a general level, what we have seen, and I mentioned it briefly in my opening comments, we are down to approximately 10% of passengers that we'd expect to have operate in Canada at this point. And that has been going on now for 6 or 7 months. The simple fact is there is not business, there is not activity that can be sustained when you're operating on 20% overall of your fleet and 10% load factors on your aircraft. Now, again, I do have to stress I don't speak for any particular carrier in the decisions it has made, but by and large, we have simply seen this continued degradation of passenger counts, et cetera, and that has left us where we are today.
Mr. Bachrach?
Mr. McNaney, I certainly understand the impact on the air transport sector and the need for federal support. I think what a lot of Canadians are looking at these big financial packages, and in the past, some of those federal contributions have gone to executives and to shareholders. Now, we've been saying very clearly that we feel that any federal support for the sector should go straight to workers, making sure people remain employed and not go to executives and to shareholders. Do you think that's a reasonable expectation for the Canadian public to have of sectoral support from the federal government?
I think thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a reasonable expectation. I think we also have to look at what industry, at least my side of the industry, is asking for, and that is loans and loan guarantees. So I do think that that is a reasonable enough ask. In terms of the details, et cetera, I'm sure the federal government will avail itself of everything it needs to in terms of what those details are. But at this point, we do not know what the tone and tenor of any support might actually be.
One more question, Mr. Chair.
Short one, Mr. Bachrach. Go ahead.
The minister has said no dollars are going to flow until the airlines refund the passengers who had their flights canceled. Do you think that's a reasonable expectation?
Mr. McNaney?
I think it's a reasonable expectation for in the minister's view, and I'm fully certain that whatever comes forward is going to be commensurate with that view.
How about in your view, Mr. McNaney?
Well, in my view, to be honest with you, reasonableness would have been that 7 months ago, the situation would have been addressed and financial assistance would have been provided on a robust basis to the industry. And we would not find ourselves having these elements of conversation with respect to the amount of flights that have been canceled and the number of layoffs we've had.
Thank you, Mr. McNaney. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm now going to go for 5 minutes to Mr. Shipley. Mr. Shipley, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't sure I was going to get those 5 minutes. I was starting to think
I'm trying to squeeze them in.
I appreciate that, so I'll try and make good use of them. So I had obviously even closed my notes up a little bit, so just give me a moment here. So my first question is for Mr. McKenna. Mr. McKenna, in your opening comments, you made a statement that intrigued me, and I wrote down your quote. You said you wrote 6 different letters and had no acknowledgements back. Could you explain to me when those were sent, not specific dates, but roughly when those were sent, to who those were sent, and what those were requested in the letters, please?
You're on mute, Mr. McKenna.
Thank you. Yes, to be brief, we wrote letters basically every month since March to the Minister of Transport, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Economic Development, and to the Prime Minister. And basically, we're doing 2 things. We're identifying what kind of help is be required, and we're offering our services, our cooperation to work towards such a program. That's what we offered, and we keep offering the same thing, much in the way that what I spoke about today in my opening statement.
And you mentioned you didn't hear back on any of those letters whatsoever, just to clarify?
No, that's right. That's right. That we have not had any kind of response from any of those letters from anybody. I mean, we are talking to the minister's office. I have to be frank on that. They do return our calls. We have a conversation going on with them, but we don't have any other. It's not a dialogue, basically. It's basically we're asking for things, and they're saying, well, we feel your pain, and we're trying to do something to help you. Basically, that's what we're getting as an answer. But we've had no formal responses at all from any of our letters.
Okay,
Mr.
thank
Shipley.
you. The next question is for Mr. McNanny. Mr. McNanny, you mentioned in your opening remarks also that, to paraphrase a little bit, please, other countries started months ago, and Canada is a bit of an outlier with some programs that were offered. Could you tell us exactly where we're slipping behind and what some of those other countries have offered and that Canada's missing?
Mr. McNanny.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few elements of it. At its most basic, sir, it is direct sectoral support for the aviation sector, and that started to flow in other jurisdictions, in particular the EU, back in May, the United States, May-June time period. And it's consisted of a variety of things. Some of it has been loans. Some of it has been loans guarantees, as we said. Some of it is in direct injections into operators. And the whole point of it, as I said at the outset, was to stabilize the sector because of the broader role it has to play. And I do want to very quickly note, Canadian carriers are in this crisis now, not because we've had bad business plans or made poor corporate decisions. We're in this crisis because of the pandemic and in the economic chaos of that pandemic. I certainly do not view what we are looking for in terms of a bailout. A bailout is an industry that got itself into trouble because it made bad decisions and people stopped buying its products. And that was not the case. We entered 2020 with a level of connectivity we had not seen, tens of thousands of jobs as we continued to invest, but the pandemic has ostensibly laid low to all of that activity.
Thank you. And further to some of your comments were, and this is again is for you, Mr. McNanny, you mentioned that foreign operators were taking market share. That's very discerning to me. Customers are always hard to get. And when you lose one, they're very hard to get back. What is making it? I mean, flying isn't banned in Canada. It's just a little bit more difficult. What is making it that we're losing market share to foreign competitors?
We're losing that market share, sir, because as they have continued to receive support, they are able to keep more capacity in the market than Canadian operators are able to do. And what we're seeing over time then is that they are starting to pick up more and more of the capacity of those particular international routes. And it has taken Canadian carriers years to muscle their way in on these routes. You're absolutely right. Once you've lost a customer, it's extremely hard to get them back. And that's particularly difficult in aviation, where carriers compete ferociously with each other on long haul service. So we've basically, to some degree, ceded the playing field to these international operators because they are receiving investment and support from their governments. They are able to keep a level of capacity on that goes beyond what used to be the case, and now we are falling behind.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, I still have a bit of time, do I?
Yeah, you got 30 seconds.
All right, I'll make this a very quick question. I'm not sure who to direct this to. It's in regards to a much smaller airport. And I'll give an example. An airport like Thunder Bay Airport, a very small regional airport, a lot of their traffic has been down to almost nil, but there's still some fixed costs there that are now being passed on to the few surviving regional small airlines that are drastically needed to service the north and many of the indigenous communities in Ontario. Those fees that are being passed on to those small airlines that are still managing to fly are just not doable. What can be done for these small airports where there's things like fire or emergency or snow plowing are all being passed on now to these small regional aircraft who just can't pay the additional costs because the other airlines aren't flying? Can one of you gentlemen help me out with that and say how can we help these smaller ones and these remote airlines?
I'm going to ask whoever wants to answer that question to try and fit it into an answer for the next speaker. I'm going to move on to Mr. Rogers for 5 minutes, and he'll be the last speaker of the day. So if one of you can try to incorporate your answer to that question into one of his questions, that would be wonderful. Mr. Rogers, floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was thinking we're running out of time here. Anyway, welcome to all of the participants today, the witnesses, and the information, the insight they provided. For Mr. Grant, the fall economic statement contains a significant boost to ACAP, the airport's capitalization assistance program, as well as up to 206 million over 2 years, starting in 2020, 2021, to the regional development agencies for a new regional transportation initiative. How might these measures help your members, and what kind of projects does it help fund?
Yes,
Gentlemen.
thank you. The Airports Capital Assistance Program will fund capital things such as runway overlays, runway rehabilitations, lighting, equipment used to maintain the runways, and other safety measures strictly related to passenger air service. The $206 million, we're still waiting for information on just exactly what sectors that will involve. We don't expect a lot from that as the small regional airports operations and the ability to pass on as little of a fee cost as possible is where we're at. And that goes back to the last question about what we can do with those fees. The small airports are actually very limited in what they can do going forward. We have already cut everything to the bare bones. So unfortunately, support is the only answer, I believe, to keeping those fees low.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. For Mr. Gooch, help us understand the importance of the airline industry and the importance of airports by explaining the role that airports play in connecting communities and even the country as a whole, particularly in small rural parts of Canada.
Thank you for the question. It's essential. I mean, I'm from the same part of the world as you. I'm from western coast of Newfoundland, and my community is Stephenville that saw steady declines in air service over the years, whereas Deer Lake has had it build up, and you can see the difference in terms of whether you can get there or not, and whether you need to connect multiple times or not. We saw tremendous investment into all parts of Canada by our air carrier partners over the last 10 years, and Atlantic Canada saw a lot of that. New air carriers coming into the market. The introduction of WestJet, the expansion of Porter. All of this increased competition, increased connectivity, and it brought fares down. And we saw this around the country. It is so important for these communities, and they spent a decade building those services up. When we saw air traffic in the region plummet to levels that my colleague in Deer Lake says she hasn't seen since the year I was born. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And when a community loses service, if you think it's difficult to get a customer back when you lost them, it's just as difficult to get an air carrier and an air service back when you've lost them.
Rogers.
Yes, and I appreciate where you're coming from because I know we've heard from the Atlantic Association of Airlines and the Airlines Council, and certainly the Atlantic Bubble, as they contributed to that as well. Plus, they've been lobbying hard for the rapid testing in airports. So, some of the people have already mentioned that today. So, do you see, Mr. Gooch, that that would be beneficial in small rural airports as well?
Mr. Gooch.
Absolutely, thank you. Absolutely, the communities in Atlantic Canada are really hurting, and they want to see the expansion of rapid test. I mean, I am optimistic. We have good engagement with government on a lot of these issues, and there are forums where these conversations are taking place. There's more of the tests are hopefully coming into Canada, and we can deploy them in this type of an environment. It's a bit slow, and we do have some concerns about the timelines because. We don't have a lot of time to waste. The summer schedule for airlines is not set the week before; it's set months out. Airlines need to decide where they're going to put their aircraft, and they will put their aircraft where it's going to make the most money, and even more desperately so in terms of making those decisions nowadays.
Quick question.
No, that's fine, Mr. Chair. I'm good with that. These
Wonderful.
are the key questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Gooch. Thank you to all the witnesses today and to the members. Great dialogue, great questions, great answers for the most part. And I do want to say before I do adjourn the meeting that we do look forward to further dialogue between the sector as well as the department, and dialogue that I'm sure with fair conditions attached will come back with what we're all looking for in the best interest of the people that we represent. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting. Have a great